Hey legends, this is Mike, the guy late to every pop culture party. I want to just shout out this video from the YouTube channel Vermillion because this video, Static is the only black superhero, at first caught me off guard. Or which got me to click on it. And what followed was a pretty profound 8 minutes that I wasn't expecting to get out of it. Let's just get straight into it.
Before anything else, we need to define what we're actually talking about here. Because most disagreements here in this realm come from people collapsing different concepts into one bucket. When people say black comic book characters, they usually mean visual representation, skin color, costuming, cultural aesthetics, what the character looks like on the page. That's not quite the same thing as authorship. Authorship is about who originates the character, who decides their internal logic, and who has narrative authority at the moment of creation. Those distinctions matter because origin determines the default assumptions, and default assumptions determine almost everything else downstream. And once you make that distinction, the landscape kind of changes immediately.
Sorry for
Take
the
the most
stupid
commonly
line.
cited black characters in mainstream comics: Storm, Black Panther, Luke Cage, Blade. These characters are culturally significant, no question, but all of them were created inside white-owned institutions by white creative teams. Now, that's not a moral accusation, but it is a factual observation, and facts have implications whether we like them or not. Characters created under those conditions tend to be reactive. They emerge as responses to cultural pressure, market demand, or social visibility. Storm appears in a book already structured around allegory. Black Panther appears during peak civil rights visibility, and Luke Cage is nearly inseparable from the blaxploitation era. These characters
So a big point of this is that Static it was made unlike other black characters that we see in media. Static specifically was authored or created by black creators, or with a black writing team, with the black community in mind, right? In full from start to finish, ish. Other than like distribution from DC and stuff of with their comics, but otherwise like the Static being the only black superhero like in its fullest extent of the term. And this reminds me of a detailed video from the YouTuber or Pillboy, I believe is the name. And I'll also link this video and Pillboy's video at the end of this, is so that you could get the idea of what I mean.
aren't married to their answers to questions of the industry was already being asked at the time. Now, contrast that with a character like Peter Parker. Peter Parker isn't an answer to anything. He isn't solving a representational deficit. He isn't carrying symbolic weight at his birth. He's allowed to be narratively neutral. He's insecure sometimes, selfish sometimes, inconsistent, sometimes unlikable, because his existence doesn't need to be justified. And that neutrality isn't really trivial, it's more of a privilege, really. When a character is introduced as a solution, they naturally inherit constraints. Their failures become statements, their flaws become commentary, their very presence is interpreted symbolically whether their story intends to or not. And that's really the structural difference. You can have infinite representation and still lack authorship. You can flood a universe with black faces while keeping narrative control centralized. That's how you end up with diversity that looks expansive, but feels thin once you kind of interrogate who's actually speaking. So when I say the number of authentic black comic book characters is suspiciously small, I'm not making an emotional claim. And if you disagree, then you disagree with me not on values, but on definition. So at this point, there's bound to be some objections, so I do want to kind of deal with those directly at the front here. No, I don't believe most of these creators are racist. I don't believe any of them are scheming. And I really just do think that most of them are doing the best that they can. I don't believe that these creators had any ill intent. That's really not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is despite their good intent, it doesn't really matter. And that's not because I think intent is irrelevant morally, but because intent does not override incentive, and industries move according to incentives and not feeling. Look, the reality is this. Comic book companies wanted the benefits of diversity without the cost of transferring creative control. What I mean by this is that
Pillboy's video about I believe it's called Too Black Too Black for Comics. He goes deep into this on how how DC's editorial staff really bogged down on what certain things that Dwayne McDuffie could do with Static.
Creating a black character is cheap. Hiring, empowering, and retaining black creators with origin level authority is not so cheap. It costs institutions control, it costs predictability, and it costs the ability to define what acceptable blackness looks like. So what you get instead is representations tightly managed. Characters who look diverse, speak in approved registers, and exist within boundaries that don't threaten ownership or authority. And I'm not saying this is some grand conspiracy, I'm just stating that's how centralized systems behave. The result is something that feels sincere on the surface, but hollow underneath. Stories that resemble black experience without being rooted in it. Characters that are legible, marketable, and safe, but rarely destructive. This is what I mean by the concept of cultural ventriloquism. Cultural ventriloquism isn't theft, it's not caricature, it's when institutions speak through a culture instead of from it, while retaining ownership of the voice. The characters talk, the institution controls the mouth. And because the output looks progressive, the structure goes largely unchallenged. Marvel can make billions off black IPs and still have most of that value accrue to shareholders, executives, and legacy ownership structures. Economic success at the top does not imply creative agency at the bottom. So when people point to characters like Black Panther or Miles Morales and say, see, representation works, they're kind of missing the point in my opinion. Representation worked for the company. The question is whether authorship is moved, and in most cases it did not. And which explains why the list of authentically black characters stays short. Not because black creators aren't capable, but because the system rarely rewards origin level black authorship once diversity can be simulated without it. And again, this isn't a moral accusation, it's an incentive problem. And incentive problems don't fix themselves just because everyone feels good about the outcome. As a counter example, I'd like to bring up my personal favorite black superhero, Static. Static is different in a way that's immediately noticeable once you know what to look for. And that difference isn't aesthetic, it's not about tone or animation quality or target audience, it's about how much explanatory weight the characters carry. Static isn't introduced as a solution to a representational problem. He's not framed as the evidence of progress. He's not tasked with justifying his own existence to the audience. He's allowed to be narratively neutral, like with Peter Parker, we established that before. He's smart, he's impulsive, sometimes annoying, sometimes wrong. He makes mistakes that don't read as commentary. His failures don't collapse into lessons about race or responsibility written at large. They're just failures. And the reason for that is because Static comes out of Milestone Media. It was co-created by Dwayne McDuffie, alongside Dennis Cohen, Michael Davis, and Derek T. Dingle. Black creators with origin level authority, not consultants, not later write-ins, but originators. And when authorship shifts, our default shift. You can feel it in a way that the show doesn't pause to translate itself. It doesn't check in with the audience to make sure it's being understood correctly. Blackness isn't framed as a context or spectacle. It's simply part of the environment the story assumes. When a character is created from within a culture rather than filtered through it, the story stops performing and starts behaving. It trusts itself. It assumes comprehension instead of negotiating legitimacy. Static works because he isn't constrained by the representational obligation at birth. He doesn't have to stand in for anything beyond himself. And that freedom is what allows that character to breathe. The inverse is why so many black characters fail to stick, why they feel so interchangeable, and why they arrive loud but fade fairly quickly. They're over-determined. They're born carrying meaning before they're allowed to accumulate it naturally. Like, for a direct comparison, why do you think Static is so much more popular than Black Lightning? It's simple. The system that produced him was different. And this ultimately brings me back to my original claim. The list isn't short because black creators are rare. It's short because origin-level black authorship is structurally disincentivized once representation can be simulated without it. So, before I close, I just want to recap and be clear what this argument is and what it isn't. This is not a claim that white creators are incapable of writing black characters. It's not a claim that existing major black characters are invalid and meaningless. It's not an argument about intent, morality, or personal virtue. It's an argument about structure. If you look at the history of mainstream comics, you see a consistent pattern. Black characters increase in number, visibility, and profitability, while black creators rarely gain origin level control over the mythology itself. Representation expands, authorship does not scale with it. And that isn't accidental. It's the predictable outcome of incentive structures that reward diversity as an aesthetic while keeping ownership, authority, and narrative control centralized. Once you understand that, a lot of things start making sense, such as why so many black characters feel overdetermined, why they arrive carrying symbolic weight before they're allowed to be human, why they're expected to succeed immediately or disappear, and why so few of them are allowed to fail quietly and evolve over time. Static works not because he was necessarily better written or more likable or more politically aware. He works because he was created inside a different system, one where authorship preceded representation, and where blackness wasn't something to be translated for institutional comfort. So when people ask why the list of black comic book creators created by black people is so short, the answer isn't cultural, it isn't creative, and it certainly isn't biological. It's structural. And until that structure changes, until black characters are trusted to not just participate, but to originate, we'll keep having the same conversation, just with new characters cycling through it. Representation will continue to grow, authorship will remain scarce, and the gap between the two will keep doing the quiet work as it's always done. Okay, well, that's it for today's video. Remember, we live in the stories we tell ourselves. Until next time, Vermillion out.
I wanted to promote this video because as while I was taken aback from the title and the thumbnail of the video, or what followed to me was rather profound to think about. What do y'all legends think? Let me know down in the comments. Please comment, like, subscribe, share this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hype if I qualify for that. Check out the videos that are likely up on the screen. Thank you so much for the support. As of the recording of this video, I believe as of the recording of this video, we're at 487 subscribers. I'll see y'all in the next one. I'll see y'all later.